The Northern Ireland Conflict. Currently, the Irish Island, containing the countries of Northern Ireland and the Republic of Ireland, are in mass hysteria, with brutal violence by extremist organizations such as the IRA conflicting with occupying British military. This island has always had a troubled history, since the 1700s when the majority Protestant British overtook the majority Catholic island, mixing the two ethnicities. Throughout the 1800s, both ethnicities clustered into different regions, the Protestants in the northern region and the Catholics in the south. Tension began to build between the two regions when both sides followed different sets of home rule, or forms of self-governing. Home rule included the major aspect of politics. The Protestant North wanted to remain part of the United Kingdom, while the Catholic South wanted to become an independent country. Both regions also had different industries, the South focusing on agriculture and the North focusing primarily on industry, creating further tension. In the 1900s, initial violence ensued in the form of protests, bombings, and other violent acts. This led to the British creating the 1920 Government of Ireland Act, making two countries, the Protestant Northern Ireland, which remained part of the United Kingdom, and the Catholic Republic of Ireland, which became an independent country. However, violence erupted again in the 1960s. The main reason for this violence is the common goal of both countries to remain one unified Ireland instead of two separate countries, initially bringing to the surface the original dispute of home rule. Since the initial startup of this conflict, protests, bombings, shootings, and other various forms of violence have caused a great disturbance in the infrastructure of the Irish island. This accompanying map shows the distribution of Protestants throughout the island. As you can see, the majority of the Protestants are concentrated in the north, while the non-Protestants, most likely Catholics, are dispersed throughout the southern regions. The map also displays the various forms of violence and major protests, such as Bloody Sunday. This time of violence, also known as the Troubles, mainly took place in Northern Ireland. Most of the violence likely consisted of southern extremists resisting British authority. The Irish island and the United Kingdom have been affected tremendously, both economically and socially. The Irish island and the United Kingdom have lost an extreme amount of money due to the enormous amounts of property damage caused by bombings. Along with the property damage, the United Kingdom is spending large influxes of currency to occupy the island with soldiers in an attempt to maintain control. The Troubles, unfortunately, have claimed many people's lives. Approximately 3,500 people have been killed. Of these 3,500 people, about 1,100 British security and 1,800 innocent civilians are included. Protests and violence are still occurring, demanding attention from the United Nations and creating the need for further action. Although the UN should get involved, because of current rules and regulations, no official action can be undergone by the UN due to the fact that all countries involved in this conflict are UN members, violating Article 2, Section 7 of the UN Rules and Regulations, in which the UN is excluded from intervening in matters which are essentially within the jurisdiction of any member country. Because no official action can be made, the UN technically has no authority on the conflict. However, the UN can advise any countries involved on this conflict on any possibilities to resolve the initial violence. With this in mind, it is recommended that the UN should advise the United Kingdom government to further occupy the Irish island with more soldiers and means of control as necessary for peace establishment. The United Kingdom should most likely distribute its forces in accordance with the distribution of notable conflicts, most importantly, the border between the two countries. It will be up to the United Kingdom and any affiliations of military to control the extremist groups and protests that are currently profuse on the island. If this method of control is decided to be enacted upon, the UN will officially advise the United Kingdom to send more soldiers to occupy the island, making all monetary costs for this payable to the United Kingdom and not the UN. This approach will most likely benefit the condition of the island and possible future resolutions, due to the fact that the further action by the United Kingdom will most likely be more effective than the limited amount of occupancy currently on the island. Also, the fact that this may prevent the involvement of any other countries, keeping it a concentrated conflict between the United Kingdom and the Republic of Ireland rather than dragging any surrounding countries into the conflict. However, one possible consequence of this strategy could be the possible continuance of violence by extremists in reaction to further military involvement, leading to more property damage and loss of life. In other words, the extremist groups might be angered by British attempts, and in reaction will cause more violence. But if this method cannot be carried out for some reason, alternative actions are also in suggestion. One method the UN can use is to attempt to redraw boundaries to the better preferability of the citizens. This method can help in hopefully ending any boundary disputes. However, many people may still want to keep one unified Irish island, resulting in further conflict, in which the UN can also eliminate the boundary between the two countries. This idea, however, is not practical. Considering the past efforts for the South to attain independence, the two countries will most likely continue to argue over home rule, once again ensuing in more violence. One last alternative the UN can possibly undergo would possibly be rewriting the UN regulations, getting rid of Article 2, Section 7, meaning the UN would be able to interfere with affairs within the country, opening the horizons for far more possibilities, although the preferred method of action of this conflict will most likely be to advise extra British military occupancy.